Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
God, I'm terrible. I just did really funny things too. Anyways,
Come on, do it again.
what's going on, team of advisors to the government? How is everyone?
Getting ready for the school year.
Yeah. Man, teachers, we picked up our packet yesterday of because we're doing remote, and it was like Chelsea has a degree in elementary education, and she was talking about this would have taken a lot of work to put together because it's not just a laptop, like it was other stuff as well. I mean, the stuff we're asking teachers to do, particularly if they're used to traditional education and not creating a distant learning environment, like it's pretty remarkable. And I think that I don't know, Ian, I don't envy you, but also like you guys are not getting, I think, the credit for just kind of turning on a dime last year when they canceled school early and you guys had to come up with new stuff. And then also this year where you have to come up with like 2 versions of the lesson plan and then execute it with all the other variables, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
amazing to me.
A lot of the stuff that I do is through online.
Yeah.
With credit recovery stuff, so it's easy. But I do not envy a lot of my colleagues right now having to do things like that. It's kind of nuts right now, but we're gonna do our best to make it work. And our kids come back next week down at campus, so we're looking forward to it. I definitely miss seeing my kids, but we're as pumped as we can be, as ready as we can be, I guess.
And that's the other thing too, I think that we kind of overlook is how much like teachers love their kids, right? Like I remember AJ last year after school got canceled, he was on Chelsea's cell phone and got it was, I don't know, through the Dojo app or whatever, he got like a quick video from his teacher, and the teacher, you could tell, was just really emotional and kind of saying goodbye to these kids. And then AJ thought he was talking to her and just replied with he was just replying back that he loved her, right? Like he was just so that you could just tell there was a bond between the teachers and the kids, and the teachers didn't have a chance to say goodbye to the kids, right? To have that preparation. Anyways, just very like I said, I think it's somewhat overlooked how quick teachers have just adapted to this whole thing and stepped up. All right, I'm gonna turn my volume up. All right, so we got what? Oh, we're 3 minutes in. Cool. Excellent. Well, guys, welcome. Who are we missing? We're missing some folks. We usually start like officially, give it just a couple of minutes because sometimes people take a couple minutes to get on. But we do have our agenda. We try to keep it within an hour. Sometimes we go over about 15 minutes. That's kind of average. But is this it?
That's it.
All right, Janet. I know how to use the folders on my desk. 1 minute. Janet has to get back to her desk. She thought that I needed help finding the agenda. Thanks, Janet.
You're welcome.
Cool. So as you guys know, you were all officially appointed last week. Your nomination passed unanimously. So congratulations. We are, one minute, I'll put the chat over here. So we are going to get into another 3 months where we have integrated folks from the last council and folks from this council. As you know, that the goal is to really get us through COVID and get us beyond COVID. Really, I think that's one of the toughest things that we are going through economically, not just health-wise, but the economic blowback has been huge and awful. So we've integrated, for those who might have not been on last meeting, we've integrated strategically folks from the bar industry and also the health club industry, and some other. The goal, and of course, we still have people from the cosmetology industry. The goal is to target or bring on folks, small business owners who are in some of these professions that might be targeted for restrictions or for restrictions. I don't think we're going to get with the mask. I don't think that we are going to get, and I'm just guessing, any more shutdowns, like full-on shutdowns that we had in the beginning of the year. I think that moving forward, a lot of the stuff will be targeted restrictions, and the goal is to work with. We're trying to guess what industries might be the recipient of that, and how do we work through that from the government level. What is my role from the city level, and then also what can we do to get better information out to you guys, the small business community, particularly the sectors you represent. So that's what we're here for. I think last time we went through and did introductions. Are there anyone who wasn't on the last call that will self-identify as a slacker and can introduce yourself now?
Okay, I'm a slacker. I wasn't on the last call.
Oh.
I had something else. I'm Faye Borderlandware. I'm the executive director for the Alzheimer's Association. So nice to meet all of you virtually.
Hi, Faye.
And thank you for the video, Mayor.
Which video? Oh, for the Alzheimer's. Yeah, I should be walking. After watching that video, like, it looks like I gained a couple COVID pounds. So maybe it's because I had to wear that shirt over my button-up shirt, but I felt like, no videos about walking for Alzheimer's, and it looks like I should just be walking anyways. Like, I'm not sure if I'm getting enough exercise, but hopefully the campaign goes well. I should get on and share it. I tried to space out my posts, but I have more of a following now than I have in the past, so maybe I could share that and try to help you guys get some clicks on that donation link.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I need to do that. I will. All right, cool. Carrie, you were on last time, right?
Yeah, I was on. I didn't have my camera on last time, but I was here.
Cool. Probably doing crazy things in the background. All right, anybody else? And Adam, it's good to see you again. we should just appoint both of you guys.
We always joke we make
Markies.
together we make one complete functional human. Yeah, he's currently on a phone call with our lobbyist in right now. He'll be on in just a little bit. So.
And one of I think the benefits that we learned last week with the Team Harkey is they have a lobbyist in DC. So when Adam comes on, he can kind of give us a bit of an update if there's any news from DC that might be floating around that didn't make Twitter, didn't make the actual news, more gossip or whisper type stuff.
So far is we have heard from another coalition's lobbyists. We have heard that some people think there are some back channels going on for the next, but generally what we're hearing is it's a lot of just what we've all heard, on the news is pretty much correct. They're just everybody.
You keep going into mute for some reason.
Oh, I'm sorry. There, I'll try to watch and make sure it doesn't go off. What we're hearing is it's currently just a lot of political pandering on both sides. There's nothing really happening that hasn't made the news. It's very disappointing.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, we're hearing across, and this is, one specific kind of small business, but every day we're hearing of venues closing across the country. Somebody we work with just yesterday was given a notice by their landlord that they are going to be evicted so a sports bar can go in. And that's, I think, where was that? Texas. I can't always keep track of where everyone is. So that's very disheartening. We are hearing, though, there are some local governments that are stepping up. Nashville just awarded their venues, I forget, a couple million. So, and we're getting, at the Kansas level, we are getting some relief through the Sparks Committee. So, but it's a really rough, long path ahead of us.
Yes, I mean, yeah, I'm sure it is. I got to meet with Senator Moran yesterday. They're going back into session on Tuesday. I think they are looking to work something out, but with Washington and with the way that type of politics, being in a legislature, I think I got a taste of it. You really never know. He's on a appropriations committee, which means he has more weight than a lot of other folks, but he was very non-committal on the idea that something's going to pass, but he did seem like they were working on something. He asked me like, well, what do you guys need? And I was like, man, I'll send you a list. Like, we need a lot. Like, we need, but I think after I started naming things off, he kind of like glassed over, and they have a lot of work to do.
Republicans are probably going to pass it, skinny package probably in the next week or so, but Dems will pass it. So it's just for show.
I mean, that's what we get. We're going to get, so the way it works, and we'll get into the agenda, but the way it works is, when you have two parties controlling each side, you have one party puts out their values package in a House, and then the other one on a Senate, and then it goes into conference committee. And conference committee is where they start hashing out. Conference committee are usually, it's smaller, it's representatives from both bodies or both chambers, but this sounds bad. It's like the better representatives from both chambers. It's usually like the chair, the people who've kind of earned their spot, and those people usually are better at compromise. So if a conference committee bill gets kicked out, then that will likely be somewhere in the middle. But right now, the stuff that passes each chamber is pretty raw as far as expressing, I guess, the values of the majority of those chambers, which means it doesn't have a chance on its face to pass in the other chamber. So we'll see. Hopefully they'll get it right. So I don't know. We'll get there. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the agenda and be respectful of everyone's time. So has everybody had a chance to check out the minutes from last time? Are there any changes to the minutes anyone wants to present? If not, then I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as they are. Is there a second?
Second that.
Ian, seconded by Ian. With that, all in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. The minutes pass. All right, getting into an update on the Sparks funding and other financial resources. The chair recognizes Mr. Bell, who is our residential expert on everything. Mr. Bell.
Hi, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Can everyone hear him?
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Good deal. This morning we've got some new devices, and anyway, you know how it is when things go live. Invariably there are problems, and so wanted to make sure everything was okay. First thing I wanted to do was thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate you jumping on our call with the Federal Executive Association probably about 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Everyone, I mean, all of the feedback I got from that group, they really appreciated your input and just sharing a bit about what this group has been doing, as well as other initiatives around COVID. So really appreciate your time and all that. In terms of resources that I'm aware of through either the SBA or perhaps the Spark program, at the moment, as you mentioned, there isn't a new round of incentives, available for business owners. So we're still working with the economic injury disaster loans that we have, or EIDL loans. We get a number of requests and business owners that are working through those. The Paycheck Protection Program is now in the phase where businesses are submitting their applications for loan forgiveness, and they're doing that with the banks that they may have worked with to get the PPP loans. And so that process is working at the moment, and we're working pretty closely with lenders who have questions as they submit those requests for forgiveness onto the SBA. So between those two programs, that's what's happening. it's important for you all to know and to share that the SBA does have debt relief options available right now for businesses that perhaps still need capital. There is a 6-month waiver, if you will, on payments, basically 6 months of debt relief that the SBA is basically covering the principal and interest on small business loans for 6 months, and that incentive goes away as of September 27th. So the window is getting tighter. If you're a business owner and you're looking for capital, I'd recommend reaching out to us, and then we're going to ask you to work with your lender to get a loan application submitted. Anyway, I'll pause there in case there are any questions about SBA and any of our resources available to business owners.
I got a comment too on both the SBA and the Spark. So with the Sparks program, I'm in conversation with the Department of Commerce right now because both of my businesses didn't exist in 2019. And if they didn't exist after or before July 2019, you're ineligible for it. And so that's what we're classified as ineligible for that program. So for those that are going through the Sparks program that may get like turned away or denied for it, reach out to the Department of Commerce because they've been very open with me, and I'm communicating back and forth with them right now. They have a separate email that's directly for the Sparks program, but it's a little bit interesting because I ran into the same problem with the payroll protection program because our businesses didn't get established until December of 2019, and kind of put us in a weird spot. And we had to go to the last minute to get approved for the PPP, and even with the EIDL loan too as well. So we kind of were in a weird position with our business. And then now where we're at as a small business is we're facing, okay, well, all the funding is running out. So what do we do now? Because we're playing catch up right now because with COVID, our industry and the fitness industry was impacted because yes, we're back at operations now, which I know some businesses on here are not, but we're not able to operate at full capacity because of the restrictions that are on us. So we have limited people that can be in our classes. And so we're still playing catch up and the funding's starting to run out. And so, I've had to do a lot of conversations with landlords trying to figure out best ways to negotiate there and a lot of different places to find savings. So it's been a struggle for small businesses because we've had to find every, every little loophole or something like that to get around just to try to get funding to keep us going forward. It was more a statement rather than a question. It's a lot of small businesses are facing a lot right now because the funding's running out, and there's a lot of things that restrict you from getting funded because of this or that.
Jacob, I really appreciate your feedback, and I would highly recommend you reaching out not only to the mayor, but also sharing this information with one of our congressional delegation, because as the mayor mentioned, they are about to negotiate, if you will, this next round of support for businesses. And I think what you've touched on something as an example in the fitness industry. You're certainly impacted by the need to social distance. Your members can't be on the equipment that's side by side, and so maintaining that social distance obviously impacts the number of folks that can be in your club, that sort of thing. And so that's feedback that I think is vital for that congressional delegation as they're considering what's next, and how to best help. So I appreciate you sharing the information about EIDL and PPP and your experiences. Certainly for new businesses, it is tough because what happens, even with the Spark application, the applicant has to substantiate, the need, and that's kind of based on your operating expenses for the prior year, based on tax information as well. And so it's certainly problematic when a business hadn't been in existence, maybe in that prior year, to support, what the request is. So, but given that, I salute you for being able to navigate those challenges and to be able to, get assistance. So appreciate the feedback, and reach out to me for sure, Jacob, if you need any additional help.
Yeah, ours was a little bit more. We had an asset purchase, so we purchased an existing business's assets, and so we set up a new EIN number for both of them. So we pretty much started with $0 in the bank, but we still had a full operation that we took on. It wasn't we started from just me as a single employee for the past 7-8 months. It's been I have 25 employees between both my locations. That this funding is going to help us retain those employees by not having to send them to unemployment.
Right.
Understood. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Wayne, do you think, I don't know if this is useful advice, so I'm going to ask you. I know that Sparks money is being administered two ways, that we got the administration of the Sparks funds coming from the state level, which is Department of Commerce, but I think that the county might also be administrating some of the Sparks money. Would you recommend that Jacob, because I don't think everyone knows that the same stuff is being administered for two different places. Would you recommend to him maybe checking out the county as well to see if
Absolutely
that's more helpful? Kind of throwing two lines in the water, I guess. Jacob, have you been able to do that?
I did. So I applied for the Sedgwick County one yesterday. That one's $5,000. Is the CARES one for that one? I think it may be tied to Sparks because the state's 20,000 or up to 20,000 and county's up to 5,000. So I've applied for both.
Okay.
Has anyone heard from the county, or this is Felicia, has anyone heard from the county or the state on either of those yet?
Nope. We haven't heard back yet.
I reached out to the Department of Commerce myself just to kind of understand where the process was at. And the more we got talking, she kind of informed me about the whole start date thing of being a newer business and that. So I just reached out to ask where things were at, and they just said they're in the process of looking them over. What I haven't heard is they haven't really told people they're denied yet, but they have denied people. So I would recommend reaching out just to kind of get a feel where it's at.
They spoke about it in the county commission meeting yesterday, and they talked a little bit about basically they had to get their plan together and that they had not actually started the approval or denial process yet. So
I was just going to say, this is Felicia, I was going to say, like the gym industry, the salon, barber, and spa industry has had the same thing like Wayne was talking about. We've had to, a lot of places are seeing a lot less clients because of adding more time to services for proper disinfection and moving stations further apart in order to keep people, at a 6-foot distance. So I think it has impacted our industry heavily as well.
Absolutely.
We haven't heard back yet either. We applied for some CARES Act money, the association did, to help with the transition of people working remotely. And this conversation made me text somebody at the commission and be like, where's that at? But I feel for all the industries. I'm sure you can imagine the nonprofit industry. I know Kara can probably attest to this too. Donations are considerably down. So being able to provide services and things we're still doing it, but I don't know how long we can continue to do it when we're down 40 to 50%. So if anybody hears about CARES money, let me know, but we applied and we still haven't heard, and we applied several months ago.
I would highly suggest everyone just harass people, harass the people at the county, harass the people at the state. Seriously, I don't
use the word harass, but I will follow up.
Persistent, yes.
I will follow up, but I'm not going to harass, yeah.
There are guidelines that have been put out by the Treasury that this is how the money is supposed to be allocated. It's to help all of us. And especially we've had success at the state level with people listening to us. The county level is just, I really appreciate a lot of the things people are doing there, but they are not reading the Treasury guidelines the way almost every other place in the country are reading it. So I would continue, just, bug people. Also, if you're in trade organizations coalitions with other organizations like yours across the country, see if anybody else has received money like this and get that documentation and then share that also. That's been really helpful with us. Like, you know, like a lot of places have been dispersing money already. So try to find out where that's what I would suggest. Try to find out where organizations like yours have received money and then share that information.
So a couple things. I have heard that the county government is utilizing a consultant to help guide them through this. There is concern when this first came out, CARES Act money, that it's new, right? Like, how do we interpret this? How does the Treasury interpret the language? And some of the feedback has been that their consultant is very conservative with the interpretation. So just throwing that out there. What's happening in like Douglas County, I think, is different than what's happening in Sedgwick County. But it seems like they're moving along, right? It seems like they are. They're just moving along at a different pace than some. So yeah, I agree. Stay on them. To be honest, as an elected official, and I have no filter. I'll tell you guys exactly how things work. The word harass is strong, but the squeaky wheel gets the oil when it comes to this stuff. Like, there are times I get so much stuff on my plate, and then because I'm getting bombarded with something that I could knock off my plate, but might not, because in my mind, like, there's other priorities, but then it's like, okay, well, let me address this just because I got a group of people who really want it done, right? Like, so being respectful, of course, but also persistent with, in my experience in government, that helps. Like, there are people who just want to push stuff off the plate, and that might not, because there's a vocal group who want this done. So yeah, I think that's good advice. And hopefully things get better. Like I said, I think that they got to go back, and the pressure is to do something. And that's, hopefully DC does something, right? Like, we'll get there. All right, any other discussions on this? And it'll be interesting in 2 weeks when we meet again to see if people who applied actually got a response, got their stuff back. If they haven't by then, I mean, I think that's when we should start being concerned. Like, that's when, it's been weeks now, right? Like, even for government standards, like, that still would be a sufficient time to get stuff done. So let's get on to, go ahead.
Would it be, I don't know if you've done this in the past, and I know that the county commission has had their own meetings with small business owners and large business owners. Would it be worth extending an invitation to maybe Pete or Lacey or any of the commissioners, or even Lindsay, their CFO, to join us on our next call so they could give us an update, since they're the ones who are administering those funds? Yeah. Because I'm also having issues, like, as an independent business owner, I mean, it's just me, and I'm having a lot of trouble getting through to people and trying to find, I've applied for a whole bunch of different things, but I don't qualify for a lot of things because I don't have a brick and mortar, or I don't have, I don't have 25, 50, 100 people on my payroll, so PPP doesn't help my situation. So maybe we could get something together where we've got everyone talking all at the same time. Yeah. It'd be helpful.
But yeah, but you're right, though. We might get some people on a call who can help that out. Janet, can we take a note of that? And we've had, in the past, when I had a meeting with just, I think, the entertainment industry, we had folks from the county who came on. We had, I think we had Lacey, we had some electeds, and we also had some staff. And as you guys know, staff are the ones who really get things done. So yeah, let's reach out. I got a meeting, one of the commissioners today. Maybe I could bring it up as well. I think we work better when we work in unison.
And Mayor, it's a great idea. We may be able to get someone on the line from the Kansas Department of Commerce as well.
Yeah. So
to talk, from the state perspective as to maybe what their status is. I could reach out to that group. We're in regular communication, so.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, is everyone okay with that? We maybe Department of Commerce has been very responsive to City of Wichita over this year as we battle through this terrible, not just COVID, but just this economic climate. So yeah, if we can get someone from their office and maybe someone from the county, and that might actually persuade a county to also partake, knowing that it's not just jumping on something the mayor's doing, but it's bigger than that. You know, we'll yeah, let's definitely extend that invitation. We will. And by then we'll have that feedback. I mean, if it's been weeks and you guys haven't heard anything, I mean, that's going to be really good feedback to, that's that squeaky wheel thing. Like they will have in front of them real business owners and have to answer for that. So good call. Let's
So just real quick, sorry, I just did hear back from one of the commissioners, and he said they extended the deadline for the CARES applications because there weren't as many businesses as they'd hoped that were applying for it. So I guess that's a good thing that they extended the deadline so that everybody could have opportunity to apply.
I'm going to talk about what we've been talking about, just to know that I just got a text message saying that Tulsa is now allocating money. They've actually allocated, I forget, they did allocate money specifically to venues, but it's not just that. It's showing that there are other municipalities that are doing something. They're not just sitting on that money. And what we're hearing is actually that the county is sitting on the money because they're hoping that guidelines will change and they can keep it and not help the businesses. So
yeah,
is that a rumor or is that fact though?
That is something that we have heard from a number of municipalities. The Tulsa thing, that's a fact. The other one, that's rumors.
But I mean that they're sitting on it. Is that a rumor or fact?
That's a rumor that we have heard from a number.
I feel like sometimes this kind of stuff gets.
Oh no, I know. I'm just letting you know that if people want to, communicate their concern, I'm not saying we should all go in and attack people, but that is something to be concerned about, I think, and just to ask.
So it would, and I'm not adding to that rumor or anything, but I'm saying it would make sense that if the county did everything for all the small businesses and still had money left over, instead of returning it, the government might actually say, here's another tier of items you could spend it on.
Yes,
and it would be very disappointing if they're not doing everything in that first tier that you can spend it on to help our economy, and waiting for that second tier to open up. I will say, and I'm not saying that they are, I'm just saying that would be very disappointing. I will say that one of the differences, and we learned this last week, and I want to make this clear, the Sparks money was delivered based on population. And Wichita, we just were outside the population where we would have got the money directly as a city. And that's why I went to the county. So when we hear stuff about Tulsa or in the city programs, like and what they're doing, I want to, it sounds like, why isn't Wichita doing this? Like, why isn't the city council doing this? We would be if we had, I think, 50,000 more people, is roughly where we were at. And so now we have to go through the county. And that's just so everyone knows. And it's interesting because the county has to balance rural interests of Sedgwick County and also urban interests of Wichita. And so, that's one of the differences where we hear like what Austin's doing, they're doing great things, or Boston, and those areas got it directly to the municipality. We have to go through the county because of our population size. So just throwing that out there. It's why City of Wichita doesn't have those type of programs. But those programs that are done at the city level and other cities that are bigger can likely be implemented through the county here if we do a good job communicating that and get them aligned with it. So. All right, we're going to go back through the agenda. Brief information. Next one is brief review of information resources requested during last meeting. Janet, is that the PowerPoint you had?
Yes, and I sent that to everyone yesterday. The one thing I would really like to point out is how easy it was to get online for the heart key legislation. Save our stages.
Yes.
It was.
I was responding to the Tulsa email. Can you repeat that?
I just wanted everyone to know how easy it was to get online and to go through that process. Basically, you put in your name and your address, your legislators pop up, and it sends a message. And I had a response back from Ron Estes that he is co-sponsoring that legislation. So I would encourage everyone to do that.
Okay. We got did you pass out, because I think we'll have time to go through it. Did you send out the PowerPoint?
I did.
With some of that info? All right, so everyone got the PowerPoint, right? With what to do with a sick employee.
Yes.
So, okay, so we probably don't have to review that given the time we have, because it's a little long, but it's also we had on our, I doubt people had to watch this because you probably have fun things to do. We had it turned out to be like an hour and a half long live. It was a Facebook Live through Cake News, and also the city. We got together with some medical doctors in the community who are treating COVID patients and answering questions about COVID directly from our local medical professionals. It was an attempt to get accurate information out there from people that we trust, not just internet people. And one of the questions were, if I have an employee who tests positive for COVID, or not an employee, a person, I guess, how long do I have to stay away from work, out of work for it? And the doctors pretty much said if you have symptoms and you go and you test, then you can come back to work without taking another COVID test 10 days after your symptoms go away, or 10 days from the start of your symptoms if the symptoms went away. And if you tested and you're asymptomatic, you just randomly took a test, then 14 days you can come back. And that was because they said that if you don't have any symptoms and you test positive, you might still be in that 4-day like incubation period. So the 14 days is what they recommended. So what they also said of note is that if you might take another test and test positive, but that doesn't mean you actively have the virus. That just means that they used disgusting medical language. It meant that like you had the just like parts of the virus still in you, but they said it a lot better than that. But it was like you still have the leftover parts of the virus that's testing positive, but it doesn't mean it's active. It means that, if you don't have the symptoms. So I thought that was very interesting. And that information is probably in his PowerPoint as well. But it was, we don't have to tell employees that you have to test negative before you come back if they have about 10 to 14 days between testing positive and coming back while not having the symptoms. I guess the virus stays in you for about 10 days. And then what's left over, is the result of the virus, so your body responding to it and pretty much doing terrible things to the body. But I think that was something that came up. Any questions on some of these resources or information at this point? And if we need to find more stuff, we can, of course. But I think it's important to figure out what standard is so we're all on the same page and can point towards following a standard. Because if not, people, they're gonna make up their own standard, I guess. We don't want that. Yes, Kara.
Okay, so I don't think Amber's on today. I know that something that we were kind of talking about was like, like that direct contact, because in there it says like if you've been within 6 feet for 15 minutes, then that's direct contact. Now, so then that person is supposed to take those proper steps, of course. Now, what about the people who come in contact with that person? Not necessarily the person who had it, but came in contact with that person who had direct contact.
Like the secondary contact?
Yeah, secondary contact. Are those people just fine then? Because I think that's where the confusion was the secondary and then going on from there.
So I'm not sure if that information is in the packet. I can tell you roughly what I've been learning off the cuff, and someone else can jump in here if there is a more policy that they be pointed to. I mean, you talk about exposure. At that point, they are usually when you have like a possible secondary exposure, they have been recommending to isolate but monitor your symptoms. So monitor, and it's not a 2-week isolation. It's not like it's not direct exposure, but So it's like the next level down of taking care of yourself, which is monitor your symptoms, be cautious of it, and be even more cautious of protecting others, right? Like kind of act like you have it. But it didn't, this stuff changes, right? But from my understanding, it doesn't warrant going out and getting a test. So when I was one of the members who were traveled to DC in the very beginning of this. We had people at the conference who tested positive for the National League of Cities. I think I was actually at the table with one of them from Colorado, and we had to monitor our symptoms, but we chose to self-isolate we had to isolate for like 4 days or whatever, and then monitor our symptoms. And all of us chose to self-isolate for the full 10 days. Just in case. But it was because there was no evidence that we had direct contact with the person who tested positive. It was more we likely had contact with someone else who might have had contact with that person. So I don't know if that answers your question. We can look more into it as far as if there are like if there's more of a policy we can point to. But just off the cuff, that's the information I remember getting. Does anybody else have any particular policy to that question? If you have not direct exposure, but exposure to someone who might have it?
Well, it probably depends when you were actually exposed to that secondary, person, right? Because if it was the same time period that the person who was exposed, then they're not going to actually have that virus to where they can pass it, right? But if it was days later, then it kind of changes.
Yeah, it's
like if they're on the same shift and they're exposed to somebody who is exposed, they're not going to get the virus because that person was exposed within that hour period or a couple hour period.
Yeah, you got
the virus hasn't
settle in. Yeah, that's what you're saying, right? Like,
yeah. But if you worked with that person for days, because I don't think you're not contagious for at least a few days. But I'm not a doctor, obviously. I've just asked a lot of doctors about it.
I'm a useless
Talked
doctor.
at length about it.
Nothing makes you feel, when you have like a PhD type degree, nothing makes you feel more inadequate than being in a crisis where you need actual medical doctors. So yes, but the medical doctors have been really good with trying to figure this out, really drinking from a fire hose as we keep learning more about this virus. And it's actually in its different strands. So, to get to the interesting thing is the European strain actually became more contagious than the strain that came from Asia. When it picked up steam, it didn't become more deadly, it just became more contagious. So, what we're saying now might actually change a few months from now if, as the virus picks up steam, it again mutates and becomes more contagious, right? So it'll be
the slide right before the Save Our Stages slide kind of addresses that. Secondary contact. Those employees should self-monitor, wear their masks, and if they have symptoms, obviously treat it like it's the real thing.
Okay. And which slide was that?
It's the one that's right before Save Our Stages. And okay. Also the last slide, I included all the links to the websites where this information was obtained.
The citations? Is this APA?
Tons of information.
We should get you a microphone, by the way. I don't know if your microphone's that good, but.
And for us, I don't know if anyone else has had experience with this, but that's why temperature checks have been so important. We actually caught someone with COVID from a temperature check, and she was sent home right away, and no one around her tested positive. And so I just shudder at the idea of like if she had actually worked her shift,
So just off the cuff, just to piggyback off that comment, we actually, yesterday when we toured Spirit, their ventilator manufacturing plant, they actually commented on how they're testing people twice a day with temperature checks, and it was a page out of the meatpacking industry's playbook, because sometimes people wake up and they take an aspirin or a ibuprofen, and because they're not feeling great, but they don't think they have this, and they're going to work and they're masking. They might be masking having a fever, and then if you take it after lunch, then you can catch that. So not saying anyone's employees would need that, but just throwing that out there. That's
this particular person came to work without a fever. And then 2 hours later, she said she wasn't feeling real well. So she took her temperature and she had a fever.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it happened that quick, you know? So we're just like really, well, I mean, luckily she said something. And so that's kind of the thing, is we just have to encourage everyone to really monitor their health and really volunteer that information. And if they have to go home for any reason, figure out how we can help support them, because, you know, if people feel like they're not going to get paid, or if it's a problem, then, or if you're upset, then they're less likely to say something.
That's that's a big setback too. Yeah, very good point.
I'd like to I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I'd like to back off of what Brooke just said, because that's kind of what the issue that we've been seeing is that, you know, when you have that secondary contact, and in that PowerPoint, I guess it did say, so if potentially exposed should just go ahead and self-isolate, but then there just becomes that stigma and then that worry of, you know, what's going to happen with my job? You know, do I actually have this? And there's just a lot of other factors that go into this. And then it's like if I have to isolate for every potential exposure, then I can end up isolating multiple times and I never even had it. There's just a lot of different factors. And of course we want to be as safe as possible, but that's where the, because then is there third contact exposure that we need to be worried, you know? There's just a lot of question into how concerned we should be past that direct exposure.
And as a business, who do you pay? You know, who's quarantining? That's been like a big thing for us too to figure out.
So you're bringing up a lot of points that are going to kind of get us into our next item, but I do want to comment briefly. Is you're right, a lot of this is going to be cultural, where you know, where in our culture we don't want people to get people sick, but we almost want you to fight through it, right? Like we expect you to show up to work if you want to get paid, and if there is a huge level of privilege for people like my wife and I who can work from home, right? If I'm sick, I can work from home. Everyone kind of understands it. My mom and dad couldn't do that, right? Like my mom would not get paid if she didn't show up to bartend and be a waitress. My dad would not get paid if he didn't show up to the job site. He was a foreman. So, you know, and when you're kind of weighing that out, it's very easy to kind of talk yourself out of thinking that you have COVID, especially if our testing takes 11 days to get results. Like, can you really be out of work for 11 days and afford that, right? Like, so once we get faster testing, it's going to be a game changer. I know they're working on that. But also culturally, particularly for the next 6 months, we'll likely get a vaccine in the next 6 months, right? Like, knock on wood. And then we have to distribute it. And then, so during that time, that's really, I think, going to be that kind of cultural shift where we have to be, we will just need one business who was a jerk to the mom who had COVID and made her still come in, and then she infected everyone else. It's going to hit the news and it's going to be awful. But, you know, hopefully we can change behaviors before something like that happens. But it gets into our next item, which is flu shots. And one of the things that the medical community has recommended, and really the policy community on this, is how there's a couple things. First, we might have less people getting a flu shot now than before because they don't want to go into a doctor's office or don't want to go into a Dillon's. I get my shot at like Dillon's, and probably get it today actually. And and one of the things we want to stress is how they are keeping things safe, right? Like how doctors' offices and medical facilities are doing everything they can to make sure that people aren't exposed to sickness. If we have a bump in flu, one of the problems with that is the symptoms are identical to the flu as they are to COVID. They are two different viruses, but they have identical symptoms, which means two things. One, we might have people who have to self-isolate over the flu, which is going to have an effect on businesses. But also, the other thing is that we might have a run on testing supplies. We might have a run on the hospital, right? Like we might have people who think they have COVID, they really have the flu. They're now in the hospital. They're now, the lines to get COVID testing explode. And to be honest, it's all preventable to an extent if we take the flu shot. And if we're smart policy-wise, and this, I got to talk to the county about this, but if we're smart policy-wise, we will do drive-through flu shots this year and try to vaccinate everyone who wants to get vaccinated with the flu, and then figure out what worked, what didn't work. So when we get a COVID vaccine, we can utilize a similar process, right? Let's do a trial run for the COVID vaccine with flu shots, in my opinion, if anyone was asking me. But again, like I said, this goes to the county. So, I'm sure they're working on something. I think it's maybe Dillon's or Kroger on the 13th, and Janet might know this off the top of her head because we did some research on it. On September 13th is supposed to be, I think, a drive-through vaccination type program going on. It was in my notes. Adrian was the one who tries to email Janet. I don't know off the top of your head. If not, I can send out that info. But they do have some stuff going on. Now, an interesting point with the medical community, and I feel kind of silly that I didn't actually think of it this way. One of the reasons why we have flu seasons, that's when everyone goes back to school. It's not the season that the flu just decides to wake back up. It's because we're all back around each other again. So so that's why we have flu season. It correlates with fall, with the fall semester. And it might be different this year because we have less people out and about. And also wearing masks will actually prevent people from getting the flu. It's just like any other virus. So the medical community did say, although we want everyone to take a flu shot, also mask wearing might get in the way of people contracting the flu as well. You get some level of protection against the flu as well as COVID. So I thought that was an interesting tidbit of information where, there's a chance that this won't be as bad as it has been in the past. And the last thing I'll say with this is we don't know what it will be like if you catch the flu and COVID at the same time. We're just not sure what that will look like. They both are respiratory diseases. They both are very formidable. And that's particularly if you are of someone who's in the high risk category. So that's just another thought where, we want to encourage the flu shot because you'll have a level of protection against the flu. And if you catch COVID and the flu at the same time, that could be a lot worse. So any questions on that? And I'll keep you updated with the information I get from our medical community. I'm on every other week. I'm on a Zoom with Harvard, like mayor's school thing. They have a better name for it than that, but they have like the best medical people who tell us what's going on. So this is one of the things that they tell us to do. So I'll keep you guys posted on good information. All right, so next we're going to get a masks. We already kind of just touched on masks. What's the feedback on masks? As we know, the county has extended the order. We will likely extend our ordinance, but they have been working. But what's the, I guess, Janet, word as the word on the streets? How are people feeling about the masks? What are we hearing? They become more acceptable, less?
I think masks are brainless and everybody's on board.
Okay. I mean, that's the interesting thing. I'll let you guys in on, I was on a Visit Wichita meeting. In one of the slides they showed, they had those levels, it's like 4 or 5 levels of yes, likely yes, maybe, likely no, right? Like that was the type of poll. The top 2, yes and likely yes, on will you visit a city only if they have a mask ordinance. The majority of people in this poll said that they will only visit a city that has a mask ordinance are likely only to visit a city with a mask ordinance, which gives us an economic indicator, right? Where if you are pretty much visually valuing the health of people and taking COVID seriously, you are more likely to get visitors to your city. And I would hypothesize you're more likely to get customers. And just in my own experience, I think I drove past I was going to go get food over at a restaurant, pretty much fast food type place. And I had to go inside, and I looked over and a woman entered without a mask. And I remember thinking, like, this place is gross, and just drove off. Like, I'm not going in there. Like, it was just one person without a mask, right? But it thought, like, oh, it's disgusting. And that's my own bias, I guess. But I think that other people might share that, and the data is starting to show that as well, where those who are taking precautions to protect against COVID are that is being noticed by the general consumers, and it seems to be showing that that's a good business strategy. Also, I've been hearing with gyms, the gyms that are actually cleaning in front of people, not just doing a full-on cleaning, in the off hours, but actually showing, out there people spraying down stuff, having employees do that, is adding a level of comfort to folks who want to have faith in what they're doing is safe. And I think the opposite, I've actually heard from some of the bar owners who have been in denial of COVID. One of my friends who owns a bar has been in denial, has mentioned that like his business has really gone down. And I would suggest that it's probably because, you're not having those visual and implementing strategies to show that you're taking COVID seriously and you're trying to protect your clientele. I think that the businesses that seem to be doing social distancing, doing this type of stuff seem to be doing better than those who aren't. So like I said, it gets back into masks. As Adam said, it seems like everyone's kind of gets it now. I don't think it has the same stigma it used to have. Brooke,
unless it's after dark, then nobody wants to wear a mask.
Right.
Everyone says F it and does whatever they want. As soon as, nightfall sets in, nobody, it's like, it's crazy, the difference. Because people forget and they've had drinks and they think that nobody's watching them because the sun isn't shining on them. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but our staff has definitely noticed it. And
Interesting.
Maybe it's the type of clientele too, because the people who are coming out a little bit later don't care as much. But I think there's also just a psychological thing there that we've noticed.
Also, we will likely get a bump. You made a comment about people who might not care. I would assume more so people who feel more comfortable if they were to contract this. Brings us to college kids. We have seen a bump in all college towns so far of COVID. WSU just posted that I think they've had a little under 40 positive COVID cases. We haven't seen, I don't think, I got to get better data, but we haven't seen the type of clusters that K-State and KU has seen. But let's keep an eye out for younger people who might not be so concerned with catching this, who are getting back to college, it will be interesting to see if we get hit the same way as some other college towns have gotten hit with clusters and younger folks going out, catching this, not having the symptoms.
Right.
The bodies
with the open air ICT, are you planning on enforcing masks in those sorts of situations? Because I could see that being an issue.
So we
because if people think they're outside,
right,
that it doesn't matter, they don't have to wear their mask.
So particularly, our enforcement has been mostly education, and even then, it's been tougher. like I think the police, their strategy, and like it's always been like this, like where to get the most bang for your buck out of using your time, right? It's more likely, and I don't run the police. Like everyone thinks that like I have like a control panel and I go run the street sweepers and everything. Like I don't. But what I've been hearing is it's more if you have a nightclub that's stuffing 500 people in with no mask and everyone's dancing very close, the police are more likely to go to that than they are to the Lockspur and pull out the measuring tape and make sure that all the tables are 6 feet apart, right? So like, I think that if you're outside and they're spacing apart and people don't look like they're taking advantage, it looks like stuff is done in good faith. It's less likely, I think, to be an issue as far as enforcement. I think good faith is really what a lot of this, in my experience, has come down to. Where are people trying to
Are you encouraging business owners though that are taking advantage of the open ICT, which I think will be great, but are we encouraging them to still enforce mask policies? That's where like, you know, a lot of business owners may not really think about that if they're expanding their outdoor footprint.
So my understanding is if you are, if the tables are socially distanced, it's okay to take your mask off if you're outside. So having a mask inside is more important than outside because droplets circulate in the air. And if you got a fan, you know, it's about droplets circulating and they hit the mask and you get absorbed. If you're outside and you still have, you know, the tables are distanced,
but with bars, the issue's crowding.
Right.
Right. People want a crowd when they're at a bar. That's just like that's what you do. Yeah, so if people are standing up from their table and they're outside, I guess I'd just be concerned that maybe a lot of businesses don't think that they have to enforce that.
Right, and they should. I mean, the ordinance says if you can't social distance to wear a mask. And the point of the open air is so that you allow people more opportunity to social distance. It is safer outside from what we understand, but it is not safe, right? Like we can't just, we're outside so we can't catch this thing. Like you still can. So, you know, it's a good question. Let me talk to legal about let me talk to the chief of police about what the practicality is, because I'm not sure if they are, it's one thing what the policy says, the other thing what they're enforcing, right? Like, let me see what's happening and get back to you on that. But I do think
what does capacity look like for the open air? You know, if you're doing outside business, is there still a rule on capacity?
So we talked about that. I think I have to get back to staff on that because it was one of those where I think your capacity is about your square footage. And then, so if you go outward, does that now expand your capacity? And then a county says you have to be at 50% capacity. And I think that's okay if we can encourage people to do open air because it's safer. We will extend your capacity that way. But let me double check with staff because they're the ones who make those calls. But good questions. We've had those come up. I just haven't had a chance to follow up. But yeah, if your capacity is 50 people, it's now cut to 25 because Dr. Men says that we have half capacity. Now you're encouraged to go out into the parking lot, which does provide a relatively safer environment. You double your space. Do you now go up to 50 again with your capacity because you double your space? So let me ask about that. That's a very good question. And it might actually be encouraging for more folks to utilize the open air. We haven't had as many people utilizing the open air as we want or thought of right away. So we want to encourage folks to do it. I think they think it's going to be a tougher process than it is. But you know, it's supposed to be a pretty quick process. So, but good question.
For us, I mean, being in Old Town, it would be it's difficult just because you think about like, am I going to have security watching people with drinks? Just expanding your footprint like that and being outside of your gates. It just makes things a little bit, I mean, it's great and I support it, but for us, it's difficult, and I do have concerns about how, the district of Old Town's going to kind of deal with that.
Right. And we got to look into it. I mean, we're building an airplane as we fly it, right? Like, how do we keep cars open while making it safe?
Right.
While enforcing our.
I'm sure there will be tweaks as we go along.
Yeah, and the numbers as well. I think Andrew just chimed in where he has a response from the county on. So go ahead.
So the CFO has said we presented the following timeline to the BOCC at the meeting on Wednesday. Businesses can be hearing from the county staff between now and October 7th. Date to follow up on applications or documentation. They recognize our frustration and appreciate your patience. And they say, knowing that county taxpayers are ultimately at risk if there are issues with how we proceed, we are doing our best to ensure the program is compliant and protected, or to protect all involved. Read that for however you want it. The snippet they gave me, it's a grant model. It's the application deadline is 9/11. Initial review is ongoing. The earliest BOCC could vote to approve the awards is 10/7, so October 7th. Agreement subrecipient for signature on October 8th, and the earliest approved payments would be the 10/7, concurrent with the award vote. Possible disbursement the 13th of October or 3 business days after the agreement is signed. No deadline for spending requirements, blah, blah, blah. There you go. So looking like you got another month and a half of waiting around, folks. This is ridiculous.
What was that for, Andrew? Is that for
Sedgwick County's the Small Business Safe Operating Grants, the $5 million they put out there?
Oh, that little bit. Okay.
But I assume,
is that the one that's for up to $5,000 per recipient, Andy?
It doesn't say on here, but I believe so.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the one that, I mean, they talked about it in the commission meeting yesterday, like they had a ways to go.
I'm just kind of baffled by how complicated their application and process was for $5,000 and how simple and easy the state was with the Department of Commerce. The supporting documents, just, they have the information. I had to pay $10 to go get my certificate of good standing, that kind of stuff. Just all those little hiccups for a tiny amount. And then it takes them 2 months to do the paperwork. It's just ridiculous.
The county also made it sound like it was going to be first come, first serve. And then in the meeting yesterday, they said that they were revamping that it wouldn't be, it would be based on need, which, I mean, we all have needs, so.
And that was what was interesting. That was interesting between both the state and the counties. The states was actually more of a free form, talk about your situation, those sort of things, but didn't have to submit any of the documentation, where on the county side, you had to submit your 941, you had to submit your certificate of good standing, you had to do all these different things to be able to do it for less money.
And they said that there might be follow-ups, that they're gonna need more information because now they've changed kind of how they're stipulating it. So they said we will probably be following up with these businesses to get more information. Which is like,
yeah.
And so what I was saying earlier about how, was it a rumor that they're trying to keep the money, or is it actually, a fact? It is, I double checked with Adam, they're actually lobbying to have the ramifications.
You went mute.
I have no idea what's going on with my computer. We were in the mountains for a week and a half. I think I forgot how to use the computer. Sorry. I checked with Adam. No, he was saying that the county is actually lobbying to have the restrictions.
Well, it's not our county specifically. It's just at the federal level. That's what's happening right now. Is the Democrats actually in the House are pushing for more state and federal funding, and there is a push that is, if they don't get it, that the restrictions will be lifted on how the funds that they currently have are spent, and so they're pushing that those funds would be able to actually be kept by the cities, counties, states, whoever got the CRF funding. So. That is a push that's going on right now at the federal level. Depending on this next relief package, I'm sure you all saw that Pelosi and Mnuchin came to a deal on keeping the government funded yesterday. So the continuing resolution probably won't happen. But without that, now the thought is we can focus on actually getting relief. But the big hangup, one of the biggest hangups now between Dems and Republicans is the funding for local municipalities. And so, you know, that's kind of where this is falling in place, is if that is taken out and we don't, you know, get additional funding for state, city, and county, then there's a push to lift restrictions for the money that they have so they can keep it, because, you know, to make up for their budget shortcomings. As we're all closed, they're not getting tax money, you know, they're not getting, everybody's budget's suffering. But that's why a lot of municipalities aren't distributing funding. And then they're putting it smoke and mirrors as saying it's all these other reasons. But when we look across the country, we see dozens and dozens and dozens of municipalities distributing the funds. And so it's not, it's smoke and mirrors. It's not the reality. And so outright saying it like, hey, we're hanging on to this because we're screwed if we don't. And so, yeah, it's definitely not a rumor. It's definitely some stuff that's happening at the federal level.
So that's interesting, because we had to cut $11 million out of our budget this year. We had to cut $16 million out of our budget next year. I mean, things aren't good, and there's no guarantee that if the county held on to the money, they're going to cut the city a check to fill in the gap, right? So, and I'm sure, I mean, it's going to get, policy gets nasty and information gets out that some of it's accurate, some of it's not. It's going to be interesting what happens with this. It sounds like there's really two ways when it comes to distributing services policy-wise. There's give me a reason not to and give me a reason to, right? It sounds like the takeaway here is the state process is give me a reason to give you this money, right? It's an easier process. It's just looking for a reason, like, okay, help me justify helping you, seems is what I'm hearing. Well, the county process is more help me justify, you know, why would you deserve this kind of thing? You got to almost like achieve a higher bar with the county process. So, I mean, I think it's some good information to take away. If you're doing one, that we have programs running from two different governments, the state level and the county, and it seems like the state might, the application might be somewhat easier to get through than the county. So we do want to go back to people within our own circles and let them know that if you do both, but definitely do the state as well, because there's a chance that might be faster to process. So that's interesting information. I didn't know that. And I'll try to bring that up when I get to in front of our friends over at the county. But disappointing to hear, though. Let's see what happens. I know that Democrats, it was the HOPE Act, would have had somewhat of a bailout for municipalities because we can't print money, and we've had to take this economic downturn on the chin, just like anyone else. But you know, it's a federal pandemic. It's the feds. You know, the feds have a responsibility to protect us from a federal pandemic, and really they punched it to the states and local governments. I mean, we have people on the school board who are making life and death choices right now. Like, these are like moms and dads who signed up for the school board and no staff, no paycheck from this, no money coming in for benefit. They normally decide what curriculum they're going to adopt or what buildings are going to be renovated versus what buildings are going to be replaced. And now they're literally making life or death decisions with more political pressure on them than's ever been on a school board. So, I mean, that's what happens when you kick down the lowest form of government, but also the responsibility, I believe, and I'm preaching now and I apologize, and I'll turn the light back on. But I believe that the feds do have a responsibility here to help turn around this national economic situation. So let's hope they get there. Sounds like they're working on something now, and we appreciate the update on that.
They're kind of working on it. They can't come to an agreement, and it's who knows if they actually will.
It will. It'll be last second, last minute.
Yeah, we'll see. That's what we thought 5 times now, and so it's pretty much a wild card. Shit just keeps getting turned around and spun around and politicized, and at the same time, there's thousands of businesses across the country closing. So. Tons already have, many more are about to. And, we're all doing our due diligence, and, we don't want to compare ourselves to schools or hospitals or anything like that, because obviously there's a lot of heavy shit going on right now. But the fact of the matter is, most of us are closed or have closed to help get through this pandemic. It's similar to eminent domain. When you close because of a government order, you're compensated, and so many of us have done that and not been compensated. And at the same time, we're about to possibly lose our businesses and our houses and everything that we've worked for forever. So the fact that there's the state has stepped up a little bit with Sparks money, with business interruption grants. I think they can do more. The county's done nothing. So the county got that money because of Wichita. Without Wichita, the county wouldn't have got that money. So as Wichita, I think us being vocal about our need and the fact that part of that money needs to go to local businesses to ensure that Wichita stays Wichita, because without local businesses, you don't have Wichita and you don't have all the things that make it great. And the fact that they're holding on to that and hoarding it is pretty disheartening.
Yeah, don't have to tell me. And I wish that, I don't want to air out any laundry, but I think that Wichita could have a lot of voice at the table.
What could we do as this committee? What could we do to get through to the county? Because like Adam said, if this continues much longer, I will lose my house. I don't know where my kid will be able to sleep. And it's not that we've done anything financially irresponsible. We were having a great year. So what can we do as business leaders to get through to the county to say that we need help?
I mean,
we're not the only ones in this. I'm sure there's a number of us on here in that same situation.
I know. I mean, really, it's reaching out to them. They're an interesting animal to work with. I'll just say that. I set up these type of meetings and want to be accessible and make sure that I get not only the advice but also the experience of business owners, so I can carry it over there. And then part of me wonders if they view me as a partisan figure or if they view me as the mayor of Wichita, right? And so if we all can kind of carry a similar message over there, then they're not going to view Jacob as a partisan figure. They're not going to view Adam as a partisan figure, right? But if we're all saying the same message, will it be more effective? So I think part of that is reaching out and letting them know we need speed on this. And one of the interesting things is we put a lot of money into economic development, and it's cheaper to help out the businesses that are already established here and to keep them going economically than trying to attract someone from coming in from out of state, right? So the benefit of this is just obvious. It's just we need more performance, I think, when it comes to rushing this stuff through.
How many people have large email databases that they'd be willing to utilize for this? I mean, like we've done on the federal level, we've gotten emails out to our federal legislation. Would anybody else here be comfortable sharing this with, we could help craft an email, and then people could distribute it to their email bases and have those email bases reach out to their county commission. Again, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If we all reach out, I know we've got a pretty substantial one, Shannon, I'm sure you do. Anybody else willing to participate in something like that if we craft it?
Well, let's craft it and see what we can come up with, because I think that the goal would be to provide the input so that with solutions, so that they would know to fix the unintended consequences of the policy, right? We need more action. And what I learned with electeds is tell them what you need done and they will take those steps, right? Don't let them say, well, we'll have to figure out how to fix this, right? So let's craft what the problem is and what we can do to fix it. Maybe it's taking more of a lesson from the state with their application. But yeah, I mean, getting the word out would definitely be helpful. And I'm saying that I don't want it to seem like I directed a group of people to shoot them emails. So I do want to just point out this is organic. This is happening from
public campaigns and
yeah,
plans, we're already
we've
just been so focused on the feds. We're going to shift focus soon to state and local.
Yeah, I think Heart Keys are more than willing to help helm that. We know what software works best. We've been utilizing something called Salsa. We can really help streamline this. And yeah, like I said, we're more than happy to take responsibility. Well,
if we're there, I mean, if we're to a public campaign where we blow people up, let's do it.
Yeah, we're all about that 2020.
If y'all on this call want to jump in,
yeah, we'd love to lead it. And
well, let's get let's get an email going. Let's talk about this online a bit because we're right now 20 minutes over our time. I know people have to get off. I know Kara had to get off, and others. So it's very and it sounds like a tougher, or not tougher, but a bigger conversation, right? Like if we talk about what the most effective way. But let's keep that conversation going, at least over the next few days. And yeah, I mean, I think that public input always is helpful, particularly in dire situations, right? Like it helps electeds prioritize. So let's do that. Let's keep this conversation going. We're going to skip number 6 right now because we're out of time. But yeah, let's keep chatting through the email loops and through our online page. With that, like I said, we're out of time, so I got to get to my next thing. Are we okay if we adjourn? Any objection? All right. Thanks for everyone for being on. Our next meeting is September 18th. We'll shoot out an email. But yeah, let's talk about what's the best way to, I guess, get the concerns of this group to the decision makers so that they can come up with solutions over on a county level. And then we can hopefully streamline some of these funds to where they need to go. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Thanks. Good weekend.